In this video, I'm going to walk you through how I recreated certain aspects of the iPhone 15 Pro website in Framer without writing a single line of code. Make sure to stick around until the end of this video because I'm going to show you how to recreate the new read more animation that you see on the iPhone 15 Pro website. I'm going to also show how to create that overlay that appears when you click this button. And of course, I'm going to also show you some smaller tips, for example, how you can play a video when it comes to be on your website. My name is Nandi, this is Framer University, and let's get started. So when it comes to recreating stuff from the internet, the first step always is to analyze the certain animation that you want to create. And it is not only when you are recreating something, this technique also applies to when you are trying to create something from scratch. You always need to think about the animation beforehand, the certain states that you will have, and from there you can recreate or create something in Framer, for example. So in this case, the read more animation that you can see on the new website. So I'm going to just take a look at the official apple.com. So as you can see, this is what I'm talking about, that you can see on the bottom of the screen as it appears. It looks really cool. So the first step is to analyze it. You can take a screen recording of it and just play it really slowly to see how it works. So here is a screen recording of the animation. So as you can see, we have a blue and a gray circle growing in. So that's the first step. So they grow in and they stop around here. So as you can see, the gray one is a bit smaller and the blue one is larger. And so from here, the blue one starts going in, and also an icon is appearing. Here it is not growing in, the icon is not growing in, it's just fading in, but we're gonna make it so that it is growing in. Because actually that's how it is on the original website. On this screen recording it is a bit different. But yeah, as you can see, we stopped here, the blue one goes in, and the plus icon appears. So from here, this dock or this gray frame grows, and then the text appears. So basically that's the animation. So the reason why it is great that we know this little step is because, for example, in Framer, we'll need to just make these 4 or 3 steps. So let's say the first step will be when they are really small, so we cannot even see them. And then the next step will be this one where they come into view and the gray one is smaller, the blue one is bigger. The third step will be this one, when the icon appears and the blue background becomes smaller. And then the next one will be this, where it grows. And the last one will be when we also see the text. So we just need to make these little steps, and Framer will animate between them. So we don't have to care about that, it will just smartly animate between these states. And we also need to analyze the disappear animation. So when we disappear, we just make sure that the text and the icon disappears. So as you can see here, the icon is becoming smaller, the text loses its opacity, then this whole gray frame becomes smaller, it becomes a circle, and then it becomes so much smaller that we cannot even see it. So now that we analyzed this whole thing, we can jump into Framer and create this animation. So the first step is to have every single element that we need. As you can see here, we have the button itself, and we have also a little background that we cannot see because it is here. It is really small, and this is basically the blue frame that we have here in the background. So the way we can make interactions in Framer is basically we do a component. So we right click this and create a component. As you can see, we have the primary variant here on our screen. This primary variant will be basically the idle state. So I'm going to rename it to idle, where we will not see anything. But one more thing I want to mention here is that as we talked about these little states and we defined these steps, basically these steps will be different variants of this component, and we're just going to connect them, and that's how the animation will happen. So, but first, let's make the idle variant. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that this text is opacity 0, and here this plus icon will be also opacity 0 because we don't need to see it. However, before I do that, I want to make sure that I create a component out of this icon too. So I'm going to right click and create component. The reason I'm doing this is because this separate component will basically have 3 states. This will have a small, a big, and a hover. So what I'm going to do, but I'm not even going to add these for now. I'm just going to create the small one. So the small one will have everything really small. So this one will be 1 pixel, 1 pixel, this one 1 pixel, 1 pixel, and the icon itself will be as well 1 pixel and 1 pixel. And I'm going to make sure to center these. So as you can see, this whole icon is really small. So now I can add the big variant. So let's add the variant, and I'm going to just basically revert back the changes. So I'm going to just go ahead and make sure that it is now again 36 pixels, and the height also 36 pixels. And this one was 3 and 16, and this one as well, 3 and 16. So now as you can see, oops, I changed the opacity, so let's change it back to 1. So now as you can see, we have 2 variants, small and big. The reason I'm doing this because that way we're going to be able to animate this icon. So I'm going to just show it to you. So I'm going to make sure that it happens on appear just to show it, and maybe a little bit of a delay so we can actually see it. So if I check this out, you can see that it grows in nicely. So that's exactly what I want, but I'm going to remove this interaction because I don't need that. And then I'm going to also create another variant. This will be the hover state. And here I'm going to just change this to white, and basically that's it. Now we can go back to our container, and now you can see that this is now the small variant. I can change the variants here, but I'm going to keep it on the small variant, and I'm going to change its opacity so we cannot see it. So now we can change this body from fit to fixed, and I'm going to make sure that it is 56 pixels. So now as you can see, it is a circle, and what I need to do is to position it here so they will grow in from the bottom. So I'm going to just make sure that it is not relative but absolute, so I can just position it wherever I want. By the way, if you don't know what is absolute and relative positioning, you can go to Firmware University. I'm going to release a free course that walks you through these basic terms. It's going to release really soon. So yeah, I'm going to just make it even smaller than this. So it is going to be 1 pixel, 1 pixel. But as you can see, I cannot make this 1 pixel, so the width cannot be 1 pixel. The reason for this is because I have this padding here. So I'm going to remove this, and now it can be 1 pixel and 1 pixel. And now all I have to do is to position it somewhere around here where the BG is. So I think now they are at the exact same position, and I'm going to change the opacity as well to 0. So now we cannot see anything on this primary variant, which is basically the exact same thing that we want to do. So now we can add another variant, which will be appear one, because this will be the first state of the appear animation. And if we go back to this little video, you can see that this state will be this one. So we can just move this to the middle. So I'm going to select the BG, hit Option and Age Option and V on my keyboard. So it is now in the center. And I'm going to make sure that it is a bit bigger, and we can also increase its opacity. So now as you can see, it is growing bigger and bigger. I think we can use 100 pixels. And then we do the same with body. We select it, we hit Option and H, then Option and V on our keyboard. Now it is centered, and we change its width and height to 56 because that's where it was. And now we can also make sure that we change the opacity to 1 so we can actually see what is going on here. Okay, so now we have the appear 1. Let's check out what is the next state. The next state is this one. So we show the icon and the blue BG frame will become smaller. So let's do just that. So here we're gonna create a new variant. We're gonna call it appear 2, and I'm gonna select the plus icon, which is, as you can see, right here, and we don't really want that to happen. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna select the text because now it's relative. I'm gonna change it to absolute. So now, as you can see, this plus icon here in the middle, because the text doesn't take up space because it is now absolutely positioned. And if I change it to big and change the opacity as well, you can see that indeed it is right here. And now all we have to do is to change the BG to 1 and 1, and also, sorry, 1 pixel and 1 pixel, so it's really small here. And then we can also change the opacity to 0. So now, as you can see, we have this state right here. We can also take a look at how this animation looks right now. So I'm gonna just connect them like this. It's gonna happen on appear. We're gonna wait 0.25 seconds, and then it's gonna be connected to here. We're gonna wait another 0.25 seconds. Let's take a look. And as you can see, it looks really weird. It's because it goes back to appear 1 from appear 2. So I'm gonna remove this interaction. And you can see that the icon comes in from the right side. It's because the text that we changed to absolute right here, so we can make the icon come to the middle. This text is still relative here. So I'm gonna just change it to absolute. So now here we already have the plus icon in the middle, so it won't come in from the right side. Because as you can see, if I revert these changes back, now the text is relative. You can see the plus icon is right here, and we went from the appear 1 to appear 2, and that's why this was coming into view from here. So let's make it to the middle by setting the text to absolute on appear 1. And if we take a look at this right now, you can see that it looks not bad, but for some reason it's still, the icon comes in from the right side a little bit. So I'm gonna take a look at why this might be happening. Maybe I'm gonna also change the text from relative to absolute on the first state on the idle variant, and let's see if it changes anything. And yeah, as you can see, now the icon comes in from the middle, and it nicely grows in. So now we can take a look at the animation again and see what our next state is. So we basically change the width of this whole gray frame. So let's do just that. So I'm going to create another variant. It's going to be appear 3. And I'm going to change the body to fit content. And I'm going to also change the text to back to relative. One thing that I need to change here is the padding, because as you can see, now we don't really have space around, for example, the icon. So I'm going to just put back the padding here so it looks exactly like this. And then from appear 3, we're going to go to appear 4, which is basically the last state where we see the text as well. So now I'm going to connect these to the chain. So appear 2 to appear 3. The interaction will happen on appear, and we're going to wait 0.25 seconds. And we're going to connect this one to the last one. So we can take a look and see if there are any issues. And as you can see, there are a bit of, yeah, there is some weird things happening. So the text is coming in a little bit from the top, and that's because we changed it to relative, but only here. So I'm gonna try changing it to relative positioning here. But as you can see, it doesn't really solve our problem because now we don't see the plus icon. So that's why I'm not gonna change it to relative and I'm keep it absolute. But as you can see now, as I changed it back to absolute, it is here and not here on top. So it is in the middle, in the center, and not right here. And that's exactly what we want, because now if we take a look at this again, you will see that now the text comes in from basically the center and it doesn't move in from the top or the bottom. So it looks really great. I think that's exactly what we wanted to achieve. So now we have the whole appear flow. So we go from idle to appear 1, appear 2, appear 3, and appear 4. And Framer smartly animates between these states. However, there are some things that we can change in terms of the transition, because as you can see, it is a bit too fast, I would say. If we take a look at this one, you can see that it is much slower at the beginning. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go here to appear 1, and we're gonna wait a bit more before we go to appear 2. So we're gonna wait 0.5 seconds. And we're going to make sure that the appear 2 has a different transition. If we change the transition on appear 2, it will basically mean that to go to that specific state, we will have a different transition. So when we go to appear 2, I want this to happen a bit slower. So I'm going to adjust these values here. So now as you can see, this is the preview of the transition that we will have. So let's take a look at that. Now, as you can see, is much slower when we appear. When it grows in, it waits a bit more, and then it becomes smaller a bit slower. And basically that's it. So what we need to do here is to do the disappear animation as well. But before that, I'm gonna make sure that we have a hover state on this one. So I'm gonna just change the background color of this. So it is maybe 80%, or no, let's change it to 60 so it becomes darker. And we also change the plus icon to the hover state. Okay, so now we can make our disappear 1. So the disappear 1 will basically have the same state as appear 4. And from here, we're gonna go to disappear 2. Let's take a look at the video. So as you can see, disappear, the first thing that happens is that we lose the opacity of the text and the icon becomes smaller. So text opacity 0, icon is small, and opacity to 0. So this is disappear 2. Now we can create disappear 3. So let's take a look at the video how the disappear 3 should look like. As you can see, this becomes smaller. So we're just gonna change these to absolute positioning. And as you can see, it is exactly the size that we need. But I'm gonna make sure that we don't have padding and make sure that is fixed. So it looks like this. And then the disappear 4 will basically have this disappear, which means that the width will be 1, height will be 1, and opacity will be 0. So let's take a look at how this looks. So I'm gonna connect appear 4 to disappear 1. It's gonna happen on appear, but we're gonna wait a bit more here. And from here, I think this one can be 0.25. Okay, from disappear 2, we're gonna go to disappear 3. It's gonna happen on appear, 0.25 delay, and then from here to here, 0.25. And from disappear 4, we're gonna go to No, we're not going to go anywhere. We're just going to take a look at this right now. So as you can see, the disappear is not really happening. Let's see, why is that? Oh yeah, and here we go. That's the problem. So this is a tap interaction, which needs to be an appear interaction. So now it will be great. So as you can see, there is a bit of an issue because it doesn't really look the way we want it to look. So we basically just want to wait a bit more before we go from disappear 3 to disappear 4. So we're going to change this to 45, and let's take a look at this right now. And as you can see, it is much better, and it is basically the exact same animation that we want to have. However, now that we previewed this thing, we can now remove some of these animations or interactions because we don't need them. So from idle, we don't want to go to appear 1. From appear 1, we are gonna go to appear 2. From that, we're gonna go to appear 3, and from there, we're gonna go to appear 4. But here, we're not gonna go to disappear 1. From disappear 1, we're gonna go to 2, 3, and 4, and from 4 we're gonna go back to, let's say, the idle one. So idle and 0.25 second delay. So the reason why we're doing this is because we're gonna control the variant of this button with scroll variants. So when we reach a certain part of the website, so as you can see here, when we scroll down here, it appears, and when we scroll here, it disappears. So that's how we're gonna change the variant of this button. So the default state will be the idle one, and when we scroll here, it's gonna go to appear, and from there, it's gonna automatically go to appear 2, appear 3, and appear 4. And when we say that, hey, let's go to disappear 1, it's going to go to disappear 1, but from there it's going to automatically go to 2, 3, and 4 because we have these appear interactions right here. Okay, so now that we have this little container which includes our button animation, we can put it inside of our website. But before we do that, I'm going to just show you how it looks. So it basically appears when we reach this explore the full story section, and it is sticky to the bottom of this section. So this basically means that we're gonna put it within this section, and we're gonna set its position to sticky, and we're gonna set the bottom value right here. And then we're gonna also add the scroll variants, but let's just start by pasting this within the section. So I'm gonna select this section that I want to paste it in, and I'm gonna paste it in basically with Command and V. So now it is right here on the bottom of this container or section, and as you can see, we cannot see it because it is on the idle variant, but we can change it to appear 4 so you can see how it looks. I'm going to change it to sticky from relative, and as you can see, it has a top value, but we don't want it to be sticky to the top of the section, but we want it to be sticky to the bottom of this section, as you can see. So I'm going to remove this value here and add the bottom value, and I'm going to set it to 24. But as you can see, now it disappears from here. I don't really know why this is happening. I think it might be a bug, but I'm not sure. Maybe this is the way it is intended to work, but I'm not sure. So yeah, it is now sticky. So if I start scrolling on this website, you can see that it is sticky and is now here on the bottom of this little section. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change this to idle, and we're gonna add the scroll variants. But before that, I want to mention that in order for sticky positioning to work, you're gonna have to set all parent frames overflow to visible. So as you can see, one parent frame is section, overflow is visible, second parent frame is main, overflow is visible, and then we have the desktop, which is also overflow visible. So now we can add the effect to this container, to this button, and it will be the scroll variant effect. We're gonna use the section in view trigger because we want to have this animation when we reach this section, more specifically the middle of the section, and we want this to replay yes. And the section will be section 1 because, as you can see, if I select this section, it has a scroll section named 1. So that's how I can use this section as a trigger, and we're gonna make sure that it changes to appear 1. So now, as you can see, as I start scrolling down, it nicely appears when I reach the center of the section, but it doesn't disappear here. So I have another section here, which is down here, and it also has a scroll section, which is called 2. So I can go back to this button and I can add another section, which will be section 2. So when I reach section 2, I'm gonna change it to disappear 1. So the whole disappear flow will be initiated. So as you can see, this is now nicely appears and it disappears when the time is right. So it is pretty cool. That's exactly what we wanted to do. But now I'm going to show you how you can add the overlay to this button. Because as you can see, if I click this container, I can add an overlay to it. So now it has an overlay, and it basically will be an overlay with a really specific color. You can change the background color here. The z-index will be really high. So as you can see now, the navigation is on top of the overlay, but we want the overlay to be on top of everything else. I'm not gonna recreate it from scratch. I'm gonna just go into the original file and show it there. So as you can see, this overlay here, it has a couple of layers, but I'm gonna show you the rough structure of it. So we basically have the overlay here. We change its fill color, and we can also specify the enter and exit animations, and we can also block the page scroll. So when we scroll here, the page will not scroll with it behind the overlay. And just to show you, this is what we are creating. So this is the little overlay that this is doing. So as you can see, we have a window frame. And within this window frame, we're gonna put the content frame. We need this window frame because we can set these pins to 0, so it takes up the whole screen. And we can change this window frame's overflow to hidden, but the overflow Y will be scroll. So when we have this content frame here, and as you can see, it is much larger than the window frame, so it is overflowing. This overflowing part will be actually scrollable. So as you can see here, when I click this, here we have the content frame, but it is much longer, it goes down. And we can scroll it because the window frame is set to overflow Y scroll. So basically that's it. It's nothing special. One more thing is basically just a really small little detail. So as you can see, even on the original, as you can see when we open the overlay, there's like a little bit of a background blur happening. So the way we're gonna do this is by creating a blur layer here, which is basically behind this content frame. And it is also set to absolute positioning with all pins activated, so it takes up the whole space. And it has a certain color, but it is just 1%, and it has a background blur value. And basically that's it. And you also specify an appear effect for it. And yeah, that's it. The other important thing about this overlay is this appear animation on the content frame. But it is again really simple because all you need to do is to apply a appear animation on this content frame. So here is the content frame, and as you can see, it has an appear effect. And if we go into this appear effect, you can see that the enter effect is 1 opacity, 1 scale, but the Y offset is set to 1000, which means that it will be pushed down to the bottom and it will come in from that position. But as you can see, the exit effect is a bit different because here we change the opacity to 0 and we don't change the offset. So as you can see, when we open this, it comes up, and then we close it, it just fades out. The last thing I want to show you is that you can add a little close button here, and you can add an interaction to it, which will be close overlay. So you can just click this close overlay and the close overlay interaction will be added. So you can just click this to close the overlay. By the way, if some of these things are a bit hard for you to understand, you can go down to the description because I have a remix for this file, or you can also just go to iPhone 15 Pro.learnframer.site and you can remix this project and you can dig into the layers and see how everything works. And now I'm going to just show you a couple of fun things that I did on this website. So when you reload it, you can see that we have this video here. It's nothing special, it's just a video that plays when we load the website. So as you can see, this is a video component and I just pasted in the link for this specific video. But here we see something interesting when we scroll down, because as you can see, when I reach this section, this video here plays. And if I go back to the top and scroll down again, it will play again. So let's take a look how I achieved that. So here is the video component, and basically I had to create a component for this video component. It's kind of funny because the video is also a component, so you can search for it here and you can drag and drop it to the canvas. But what I did is I wrapped it in a frame and I created a component out of that. So the reason I did that is because by default, these videos would play when you load the website. So when I load the website, as you can see, this video on top plays. But if I have some videos on the bottom of the page, they will also play when I load the website. So that's why I create a component, and it has two variants, not playing and playing. In not playing, the video has playing set to no, and on the playing variant the playing is set to yes. And I can then just basically apply a scroll variant effect to this video, and I can choose the layer in view trigger. So basically when this layer will come into view, we're gonna change from not playing to playing. And basically that's it, how this works. We scroll down, it comes into view, and the scroll variant triggers. We are changing from not playing to playing. Another small thing, as you can see, these images are like nicely getting smaller as I scroll here. It is basically achieved with another effect, which is called scroll transform. As you can see, it has a layer in view trigger. Again, when it comes to view, we do something, we do some kind of transform. We have a from state and we have a to state. The from state, of course, is a bit lower opacity and higher scale. And then the to state is 1 opacity and 1 scale. And then we apply a spring animation. And as you can see, this is the result that we get. These images are nicely getting smaller as we scroll to them. And you can also see that these texts are nicely animating in. That's basically done by selecting these frames and applying another effect to them, which is scroll animation, which is again triggered by layer in view. When this layer comes into view, we do a specific effect with it, which is opacity 0, and we have a small Y offset, so they move in from the bottom a little bit. So yeah, that's it for this tutorial. make sure to like it and subscribe for more, because I'm coming out with new website rebuilds, because Apple released some really cool landing pages this year. So we're going to be recreating some of those in videos as well. So yeah, make sure to subscribe and follow for more. And I'm going to see you in the next one.